right, check 1, 2. There we go. We're live. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Pondering. It is Thursday, the 30th of April, last day of April 2020, and I am your host, Joel Rissinger. You have tuned in either live here on Facebook or via podcast on multiple venues around the globe. You've tuned into the Pondering Show. And what do we do on Pondering? Well, we ponder. We think things through. We talk about them. There are no limits, no holds barred. We do this every weekday, 7:30 to 8-ish a.m. Eastern Standard Time, live. But, of course, we're available on demand. So you can comment anytime. You can join in, as some have already this morning. Good morning to Susie and Eric, for example. Linda, I think, is with us, too. You can chime in and comment on the live stream on the Pondering Radio page of Facebook. Pondering Radio page of Facebook. And we're very thankful that many of you do that, and you can comment as we go. You can also post on the Pondering Radio page 24/7, 365. You can call and leave messages on our Pondering Radio line, which is 860-500-7163, 860-500-7163. Or, of course, as always, you can email ponderingradio@gmail.com, ponderingradio@gmail.com. What do we do in the show? We ponder, we talk about stuff. We encourage two things. One, we encourage people to think things through, not just swallow whole the headlines. And number two, we encourage Christians not to check their faith at the door on Sunday. Now, we tell them not to check their brain at the door, but also not their faith, meaning we believe that what we believe should dictate and inform all that we think, say, or do, that there shouldn't be compartments we stick things in, that somehow we can therefore separate our faith and convictions and our belief in the truth of God's Word from our voting, for example, or our work life or anything else. So we encourage that consistency. We do this every weekday again, Monday through Friday. So it is Thursday morning. You are on the backside of the week. You've made it. Congratulations. Good morning to Fred, also, who's joined us now. Great to have you aboard, as always, my friend. And I hope that your week is going well. It's a little rainy, kind of yucky, dreary out there today, But Sunday's coming, right? The weekend's coming, and I hear from the weatherman, who, by the way, the best weather job in the world, in my opinion, would be to be the weatherman anywhere in Namibia, in Africa. Windhoek, Namibia, the capital, great city to live in, wonderful place. So let's say you live in Namibia, you live in Windhoek, and you do the weather. That'd be awesome, because here's the weather forecast every day. Today, hot and sunny. Tomorrow, sunny and hot. Long-range forecast, light and heat. That's all we've got for now. Back to you, Fred. I mean, really, that's the job in a nutshell. I think it'd be great. But here it's a little more complicated. This weekend, though, I'm told Saturday is supposed to clear up by noon-ish and turn into a sunny day, and then Sunday's supposed to be drop dead, absolutely gorgeous. Maybe even into the low 70s, sun. So make some plans, folks, to get out and about and have some fun this weekend. It should be nice. Yes, I know you have to social distance, and you'll be out and about with your mask on. Here's the thing I don't understand. Why do you have to wear a mask if you're in your car by yourself? You see people doing this, I'm thinking, do they really think the virus is that clever? It's going to sneak in through the vents in your car. I don't know, and infect you while you're driving. I just think we're hyper paranoid. I'm sorry. I know my wife gets mad at me for being jaded, but I don't believe some of this stuff. Anyway, I know that we need to be careful. Don't mishear me. And there is a virus, and it does kill people, and I get that. But I think it's been hyped and expanded and exploded, and there's a lot of manipulation, control, and politicking going on. So I'm, a little less excited about going for a walk in the woods with my mask on in case some squirrel has COVID-19 and might breathe at me. I don't know. But I see people doing that, so maybe there is a squirrel carrier outbreak about to occur. So I hope, again, that you had a good week, and I hope you got some great plans for the weekend. Tomorrow, of course, is Free for All Friday, so we're going to rock and roll with whatever's on your mind. Be thinking about some topics you'd like to get into, and we shall surely do so. So I wanted to share something I saw yesterday, and I'd seen clips of it and little ads for it. I just hadn't watched it, and that's Laura Ingram's interview of a doctor in Michigan, and sorry the name of the doctor escapes me, but if you Google Laura Ingram, she's with Fox News. She is a reporter / commentator. She has an evening program. She did a little expose along with this doctor in Michigan who's been doing research on the numbers. Simply, knowing what he knows about COVID-19, knowing what he knows about the medical industry in general, he did not believe what he was seeing, and so he did a little research. And I'm not going to spoil it, and I can't because I wouldn't remember the details, but I will say that they had some very credible evidence and reason to suggest that the numbers we've been given about not just the number of cases, but the number of deaths for corona have been inflated. And, when you think about that, I think the reasons why are probably easy to understand. If you have a lot of corona cases in your city, you might get more federal aid, more supplies. You're certainly going to get more attention from the media. And if you're a liberal politician, then your ability to blame the president, say he's not giving you what you need in terms of PPE or test kits or whatever, goes right up, ratchets up, which again, most of these very high numbers are coming from cities and states that are managed by progressive liberal leaders. The how is interesting to me. So what they are saying, and you have to do your own research, do your own work here, but it doesn't surprise me. I tend to be, from what I know, a little bit inclined to believe this doctor. What he's saying is that there are cases where other things have been labeled as corona or COVID-19. For example, I believe it was New York. Don't quote me, check the report yourself, but I think it was New York where they said that suddenly in April, all the pneumonia cases disappeared. There were virtually no pneumonia cases reported, but a bunch of COVID-19 cases. And so this doctor is saying, wait a second. So historically, at this time of year, we have X number of, pneumonia cases, and all of a sudden we have almost none. So are we to believe that suddenly pneumonia just ceased? Or do we think that maybe some of those cases are being labeled as COVID-19? Another point he made, which I thought was interesting, was that there are many deaths being blamed on COVID-19 where there are other conditions, and there was never an autopsy done or any kind of, serious examination as to cause of death. It's just simply COVID-19, boom, on we go. And I can see some of that and attest to a little bit of that in that I work in hospice, and every patient we deal with is terminally ill. To be in hospice, you have to have a diagnosis of a terminal illness where you have 6 months or less to live, according to the doctors. Now, if you are dying of cancer or some other disease, and you contract COVID-19, there's no doubt that it doesn't help you. It might expedite your demise. It might not expedite your demise, but it's certainly not a good thing. When you die, do we list that as a COVID-19 death? Now, see, there's the interesting rub, right? Are you a COVID-19 patient who died? Yes, you are. But is COVID-19 your cause of death? Maybe not. There's one case of a gentleman I worked with who the hospice organization was never notified until after he died that he had tested positive. And we were quite upset. And I got thinking about that. Why would you not tell the nurses, the health aides, the chaplain, the social workers working with this gentleman that he had COVID-19? Well, I can only think of two reasons. One, you're just incompetent and you forgot to tell us, in which case, you're in danger of a major lawsuit, right? If somebody got it, if one of us got it and died from it, there'd be the basis for a pretty hefty lawsuit against your organization and, perhaps millions of dollars at stake. That would be a pretty dangerous faux pas. Oops, we forgot to tell you the guy that you were hugging, who didn't have a mask, and you didn't either because you didn't know, had COVID-19. Oh, oopsies, so sorry. Most of these organizations are pretty savvy. That would be pretty shocking to find out they just forgot. I think more likely is the possibility that he was labeled COVID-19 in arrears, and such that after he died, oh, by the way, he's a COVID-19 patient. Why? Why would anyone want to do that? Again, more attention, more funding, more PPE, more equipment, and maybe more political clout against those you don't agree with. So there's some interesting stuff out there, some interesting studies that suggest that perhaps the numbers are not quite as high as what you see on the 6 o'clock news or the 5 o'clock news. So again, am I saying, hey, it's okay, nothing to see here, let's dance through the minefield, it's all okay? No, I'm just saying don't let the news get you down. Think it through. Consider some of this, because I am not so sure that things are as bleak, doom and gloom, desperate and hopeless as what we're hearing. Again, even with the inflated numbers, and I think I can say pretty confidently they are inflated. How much they're inflated, I don't know. I don't know if anyone knows. But I mean, Pennsylvania, after the study this doctor did, actually revised down their numbers by a pretty high percentage. That didn't get much coverage in the media, but it's a fact that they said, whoops, well, no, it's not quite that high. And so they realized that there were things being misreported. But even with the inflated numbers, let's keep in mind, as I've said many times on the show, that a fraction of a percent of the United States population has contracted this disease, this virus. And of that fraction of a percent, I think it's 0.017% or something like that of the country that's actually gotten corona, 95 to 98% of them survive it, many without hospitalization. So again, pray, be wise, take precautions, wash your hands, social distance, wear a mask if you're going to be in close proximity like in the supermarket. Okay, I'm good with all that. And I do it when I go visit people who have COVID-19 or the staff of facilities that are exposed. I wear a mask, I wear gloves if I can, I wear a gown, all that stuff. I do it. I'm down with it. It's okay. But don't panic, and please don't think that if you're out in the middle of the woods, you got to wear a mask, or if you're driving in your car, you got to wear a mask, or if, you can't hug your grandbabies or something. I mean, I think we can be a little more reasonable about this when we know the facts and we ponder to think them through. All right, I know I'm late. I am behind on some comments here. Let me catch up. Ron is watching. Good morning, Ron. Ron says, I read that hospitals get paid more. Probably. Whoops. Don't doubt that. There we go. It would be hopeless if they follow Bill Gates' advice and don't open for a year. Yeah. I mean, if we follow that advice, we don't open for a year. There's good news and bad news. Ready? Good news is, probably fewer people would get COVID-19 because you wouldn't be exposed to anything. Bad news is you'd starve to death because we would lose our food chain distribution. We'd probably have no heat because the electric and power companies would go down. The grid would collapse. We'd all go insane from isolation. But we wouldn't have COVID. There you go. I mean, it's like cutting off your nose to spite your face. That old line. Ernie's watching. Good morning, Ernie. Great to have you aboard. Let me wave at Ernie. There we go. Good to have you aboard. So just some things to think about, ponder, and temper some of what you see on the news. I still crack up. I've shared this throughout this whole crisis. The news, they come on with, over 1 million people now diagnosed in the United States of America. We've hit a sombering number. Or they'll come back with, well, we had a sombering milestone today, 50,000 deaths because of the, and then they go through the newscast and they're showing people in the hospital and the morgue, and they have the trucks outside the funeral home picking up the bodies that can't be processed because there's too many at once, and little kids with tubes in their nose, and just all these horrible images and frightening things. And then at the end they'll show, a quiet stream, and they have their Zen moment, as one station calls it, where they show you pictures of waterfalls. And that's supposed to make you feel better, I guess, after all this doom, gloom, agony, and death, bodies stacked up like cordwood on the street. But here's a pretty waterfall. Don't you feel better? I don't know, folks. I guess I'm too old. I'm too old, too jaded. That stuff just doesn't fly with me. It is beyond ridiculous, and what saddens me is that people don't see through it a little bit more, as we should. Anyway, so yes, take precautions, be wise as serpents, but harmless as doves, in that you should still have some hope. Now, one good thing I will give the news credit for last night, and maybe you haven't heard this, but there is a new drug on the market that's being used very successfully to treat COVID-19. I think it's Renzapan. I forget what it's called. It begins with an R. Anyway, apparently it's working, and it's working very well. And they've interviewed a guy that had been deathly ill and took it, and within a couple of days he's back on his feet. So kudos to ABC News and CBS, both, who covered it, probably others too. And I thought, well, good, about time, because I knew that was going to happen, right? And if we get to that point where we can see this thing working repeatedly, which it has so far in tests, trials that they've done, it has worked consistently. And if it does work consistently across the board, and it knocks this thing out in 2 or 3 days, and the death rates plummet, guess what? We're back in business. And what I said yesterday in the program is true, that within days we would have businesses reopen, schools reopen, because there'd be no need to close, because we would know that even if you contract it, even if you contract a severe case of it, you can be treated. And of course, that's even before there's a vaccine, which they're also working on, to deal with it. Now, there's been a lot of speculation, I guess you could say, in the Christian community about COVID-19 and about whether this is the beginning of the end. This is a plague, in line with the Great Tribulation, etc. And it would take me a long time to go through stuff that I've taught, for example, on the book of Revelation or the book of Daniel or Matthew 24, the Olivet prophecy. And we don't have time to do that. And that's not necessarily the purpose of the show, to get into a deep Bible study on these subjects. Some of you have been involved, and you've taken those classes with me through different venues during a Wednesday night life group or Bible study group, and you know probably where I'm about to go. There is a huge push in evangelical Christianity toward eschatological thinking that says, hey, everything's going to happen in about a 3.5 to 7 year period at the end of the age. And we ignore Jesus' own words about the end. We ignore much of what John wrote in Revelation in context. And we are what's called futurists as opposed to historicists in our view and our approach to prophecy. Now, let me just quickly tell you what the difference is, and then I want to look at something in Matthew 24, which again, I think puts this in perspective, perhaps, or helps us not get too, hyper weirded out, ready to sell everything like the Millerites did in 1844, and dress in white and stand on a hill somewhere looking up, waiting to be raptured. I don't think it's time for that, and I'll tell you partly why. So quickly, a historicist says that the end of the age, as the Bible authors spoke of it, and Jesus himself, started at the cross or the empty tomb. It started with Jesus' earthly ministry. It didn't start, it won't start, or hasn't started at the very end, the last 3.5 to 7 years of human history. It started 2,000 years ago, by our accounting or more, and it's still going on. All the things that are mentioned, the seals of Revelation that are opened one at a time, have been opening through the ages, and there's tons of evidence of it. And it's part of the reason why men have always, Christian men and women, have always jumped the gun and said, it must be now, he's coming now. I mean, this is from the first century on that's been happening, because the seals are opened in a gradual sequence, and there's a cumulative effect, I suppose you could say, but nonetheless, it's not something that happens like that. It's a constant, gradual moaning of creation and groaning of creation headed towards the end of the age when Jesus does come. And there are different views and there are different perspectives, and there's smarter people than I that have different ideas on this, and I'm not trying to insult anybody, but I think there's tons of evidence to suggest that we should stop trying to pin the tail on the Antichrist and guess and speculate, not the least of which is Jesus' own words where he said, no man knows the day or the hour. So as soon as we think we can figure it out and calculate it based on some numerology, some, prophetic sequence that we've pieced together from Daniel and John, I think we can guarantee one thing, and that is, thanks for playing. We're wrong. Hey, Luke's not with us. Welcome, Luke. Great to have you, my friend. So I just want to give you an example. The Olivet prophecy in Matthew 24:25. This is a classic example where Jesus tells the disciples, listen, you're going to hear this, you're going to see that. Don't get too excited. It's not time yet. And so he is answering three questions here in Matthew 24 when his disciples approach him after he makes a comment about the temple being destroyed and the wall being torn down. They say, tell us, when will these things happen? This is Matthew 24, verse 3. What will be the sign of your coming and the sign of the end of the age? Now, that's three questions. At least two, maybe three questions there, right? And Jesus answers all three. And we tend to read what his answer is. Oh, yeah, this is what's going to happen in the last 7 years or the last 3.5 years. No. As a matter of fact, absolutely not. Here are his words. Verse 4, Jesus replied to them, watch that no one deceives you. For many will come in my name, saying that I am the Messiah. They're going to deceive many. So there'll be some who claim to be the Messiah, but there'll also be some who claim they believe in him as the Messiah. I think both interpretations of that are true. Now, verse 6, you're going to hear of wars every time there's a new war or potential world war. Christians stand up, this is it, yeah, this is here. No, not yet. You're going to hear rumors of wars. See that you're not alarmed, because these things must take place, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise up against nation, etc. Notice this, there will be famines and earthquakes in various places. These things are the beginning of birth pains. Then they'll hand you over for persecution. Well, wait a minute, that started in the first century. So did wars, rumors of wars, famines, and earthquakes, by the way. And they've continued. And Jesus says, just hang on. Not yet. They'll kill you, you'll be hated, etc., etc. Many false prophets will rise up, verse 11. Lawlessness will multiply, the love of many will grow cold. Has that been happening? Yes. Is it happening now? Yes, more than ever. But is it the end yet? He says, but the one who endures to the end will be delivered. The good news of the kingdom will be proclaimed to the world as a testimony to all. And then the end will come. And some would argue that's happened. Some would argue it's just happening. And some like me would say there's more to be done, because the word goyim for nations here means people groups. And there are still people groups we have yet to reach. And he goes on to talk about what many scholars would say is the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD. He prophesies about that, talks about great tribulation, talks about famine, talks about pestilence, talks about all these things, false messiahs. However, he says that when it's really time, people will see him come. There'll be a flash of light. It'll be obvious around the world that he's on his way. So my point is, yes, bad things happen. Bad things have happened. Bad things will continue to happen. But there's also the prophecy in chapter 25 that says things will be going on as normal when he comes. People will be marrying, giving in marriage, they'll be working, they'll be making money, everything will be seemingly normal, which kind of flies in the face of what most evangelicals think is going to be the case. We think it's doom, gloom, agony, and devastation. Then he shows up. He says, yeah, things will be going on as normal. And then the sign of the Son of Man will appear, right? So I would suggest we believe, listen, he could come now, he could come 100 years from now. What do we do in the meantime? Same thing we've always been called to do. Trust in him, live our lives according to his word, share the gospel, be part of his mission, try to bring more people to faith. And when it's time, he's coming. But we shouldn't sound the gun and try to scare everybody and give all these false warnings like William Miller in 1844, that make people think it's time, and then we find out it's not time, and what happens? The credibility of our faith is diminished because of our false prophetic speculation based on misnomers, honestly, about the tribulation and whether or not it's a 7-year thing, a 3.5-year thing, or a 2,000-year thing, which is kind of where I tend to lean. There's a lot more I could say about that, but we're out of time. So listen, keep hope alive, guys. Stay faithful. Stay positive. Look for the good. Whatever's true, lovely, honest, praiseworthy, of good report. Think on these things, Paul writes, and he's right. And so we encourage you to do that today. Keep smiling. Stay in the Word. Keep praying and keep pondering. And we'll be back tomorrow for Free for All Friday. All right? Have a blessed day. We'll see you then. Bye for now.